What if the next world war isn't declared, but simply begins? No warning, no countdown, just one missile, then silence. Until the smoke clears and you realize the world you knew no longer exists. This isn't fiction, it's already unfolding. And you haven't seen the worst part yet. There are nights when the world seems to be asleep, but behind that silence, something begins to crack. Silently, slowly, dangerously. Then, in a moment no one expects, everything explodes. At exactly 3:12 a.m. Middle Eastern Time, multiple cruise missiles tore through Iran's skies, destroying 3 key infrastructure facilities believed to be central to its nuclear program. No warning, no declaration of war, just explosions, fire, and smoke flooding across international headlines. That was the drop that overflowed the glass. TD News warmly welcomes you. Rarely since the Cold War has the world been shaken by such a sudden strike. But what came after was even more shocking. Not one, but 3 nuclear powers, Russia, China, and North Korea, simultaneously declared their support for Iran and readiness to stand by Tehran against further aggression from Israel or the United States. These weren't just political statements. They were thinly veiled threats, cold, calculated, and deadly serious. International analysts now say this moment is redrawing the world order. When Russia says touching Tehran is touching Moscow, when China declares any military action against Iran will trigger a strategic response from Beijing, and when North Korea calls Israel a cancer that must be burned, we are no longer talking about a regional dispute. This is a serious warning. The world is closer than ever to a war we might not be able to stop. If you find this kind of analysis essential in a time of global uncertainty, please hit the subscribe button to help TD News continue delivering sharp, honest perspectives in future videos. And now, let us ask you this. In your view, the preemptive strike on Iran was A. A calculated political move to put Iran on the defensive, B. A reckless act that could plunge the world into chaos. Let us know your thoughts in the comments, A or B, and join the conversation. Within just 2 days of the strike on Iran, a new kind of response emerged, silent, coordinated, and chillingly efficient. Without treaties, without fanfare, a new axis of power was forming in the shadows. Russia, China, and North Korea, once the mystery players of global strategy, were no longer staying behind the curtain. This time, they were stepping into the light, tightening the pressure across the Middle East with strategic precision. Russia acted first. Intelligence reports revealed that 2 military transport convoys crossed the Caspian Sea overnight, heading straight for Iran's northern border. No flags, no insignias. But the containers they carried were anything but ordinary. Believed to contain mid-range air defense systems, advanced radar arrays, and electronic warfare equipment, this move wasn't diplomacy. It was a semi-direct military intervention, a statement to the West, written in steel and silence. China, on the other hand, chose a subtler yet equally potent path. They didn't need to fire a shot. They simply delivered the right technology at the right moment. Civilian-marked trucks rolled across Kazakhstan and Turkmenistan, officially transporting industrial equipment. But according to regional intelligence, these shipments contained missile guidance systems, anti-stealth radar, and battlefield command modules. Every shipment was legal on paper, but in reality, it was a river of sophisticated military tech flowing into Iran beneath a mask of peace. And then came Kim Jong Un, not with diplomatic nuance, but with a roar. He openly condemned the US, labeled Israel as a threat to humanity, and resurrected discussions about North Korea's past weapons transfers to Iran via Syria. Now, with renewed hostility and open rhetoric, the possibility of that route being reactivated is no longer speculation. It's a very real threat. 3 nations, 3 strategies, 1 common goal: to ensure Iran does not fall. Because if Tehran collapses, it's not just the loss of an ally, it's a fracture in the entire geopolitical structure opposing Western dominance, and they won't let that happen. No speeches, no parades. Yet 3 secret supply routes have already been activated, like arteries pumping weapons and technology into Iran's weakening body. While the media obsesses over political statements, the shadow war has already begun. Military convoys, steel containers, and unmarked ships. No national flags, no military codes. But inside them lies the power to tilt the balance of the Middle East. The first route, from the north through the Caspian Sea, where 2 Russian logistics ships docked quietly at Bandar Anzali. The route avoids NATO radars and airspace, making it a clean corridor for weapons shipments. Satellite imagery shows a sudden spike in military activity around the port, hinting at the arrival of advanced Russian air defense systems and electronic warfare units designed specifically for asymmetric warfare. The second route comes from the east through China's overland connections across Central Asia. Convoys disguised as civilian engineering transports move across Kazakhstan and Turkmenistan. But intelligence officials suspect these carry missile guidance technology, anti-stealth radar, and automated targeting systems, all masked under legal documents and diplomatic silence. The third route is old but dangerous, the Syria-North Korea-Iran corridor. First exposed in 2017, this channel is suspected of reopening. Experts believe North Korea may be sending missile control electronics, command systems, and even low-grade nuclear tech to Iran. No gunfire is needed. Each border-crossing truck, each sealed container, becomes another thread in the web of Iran's resistance. And when a nation, backed into a corner, still receives support this precise, it's not preparing to defend, it's preparing to strike. Tel Aviv was glowing with life that night. Lights were bright, streets alive, and then, suddenly, everything went dark. At 10:46 p.m., a series of explosions rocked the city. Cruise missiles evaded the Iron Dome and struck targets with surgical precision, but not military bases. A school, a senior care center, a quiet residential block. In an instant, peace turned into ash, and the sounds of life gave way to screams. There were no military installations, no weapons caches in those locations. The strikes felt deliberate, cold, and far from accidental. It wasn't defense, it wasn't deterrence, it was punishment. And it crossed a line that the Geneva Conventions were designed to protect. Civilians must never be the target. Israel responded with fury, vowing to retaliate tenfold for every missile that hit its soil. But decision-makers also know every act of retaliation risks spiraling into an uncontrollable escalation. And in that spiral, it's not generals or presidents who die first. It's the elderly, the women, and the children, the people who never picked up a weapon in their lives. In a world of precision-guided munitions, there's no excuse left for collateral damage. Civilian deaths aren't accidents anymore. They are choices, and every body under the rubble is not just a victim. It is a question thrown into humanity's face. How many more lives must be lost before war stops looking for those who can't fight back? 72 hours. That's all it took for the world to be split in half. The missile strikes weren't just an attack on Iran. They were a catalyst, igniting a global realignment that had been simmering beneath the surface for years. What began as a regional flashpoint has now become a decisive moment in modern history. The world is choosing sides, and this time, no one is hiding. On one side stands the Western Bloc, the US, Israel, NATO, UAE, and their strategic partners. On the other, a resurgent coalition of Russia, China, North Korea, Iran, and sympathetic Islamic nations. The diplomatic gloves are off. Words are turning into actions, on the battlefield, in logistics networks, and in the digital arena of information warfare. Despite their military might, Western powers now appear fragmented. France, Germany, and Canada call for restraint. NATO hesitates to commit to unified action, fearing entanglement in a war without exit. Strength? Yes. Unity? No. Meanwhile, the Eastern Bloc moves with a chilling sense of cohesion, sharing intelligence, coordinating supply lines, and shaping global narratives under a single banner: resistance against Western imperialism. The real danger isn't the weapons, it's the alignment. A new global structure is emerging, not from treaties, but from decades of suppressed resentment. And now, the stakes are terrifyingly high. One misstep, one misguided tweet, one stray missile. That's all it could take to trigger a chain reaction none of us can control. If the world doesn't stop now, history will not be written in logic. It will be etched in blood. The calm before the greater storm. When history is written in real time, it rarely feels like history. It feels like noise. Headlines, alerts, conflicting opinions, blurry truths. But behind that noise, patterns emerge. And right now, the pattern is unmistakable. We are entering a new age of confrontation. Not driven by ideology, but by desperation, distrust, and shifting power. The events we've just explored are not isolated incidents. They are pieces of a larger puzzle, revealing that the old world order, forged in post-war treaties and Cold War balances, is eroding fast. What we're witnessing is not just a battle over borders or ideologies. It's a battle over who gets to write the rules, who gets to define right and wrong, and who gets to decide whose lives matter on the global stage. Russia, China, and North Korea are no longer quietly reacting to Western dominance. They're challenging it openly through proxies, influence, and technology. And in the middle of it all, Iran has become the front line, not just in a military sense, but symbolically, representing every nation that feels pushed to the edge by decades of sanctions, isolation, and imbalance. But the most chilling part? It's not the weapons. It's not even the alliances. It's the silence of the international community, the apathy of institutions meant to protect peace, and the normalization of civilian casualties. When a school or a hospital becomes collateral damage and the world barely blinks, that's when we know the moral compass has shattered. We may not be soldiers or diplomats, but we are not powerless. In times like these, awareness becomes resistance, discernment becomes defense, and conversations, real, informed, and respectful, become the first step toward reclaiming clarity in a fog of manipulation. What's the deeper lesson? That unchecked power from any side always comes at the expense of the innocent. That in a world more connected than ever, pretending these wars don't concern us is no longer an option. Every act of ignorance feeds the machine. Every act of awareness slows it down. So the question is no longer, will it happen? But what will we do when it does? Here's something simple, but worth thinking about. If war were to break out in your region tomorrow, what would you protect first? A, your safety. B, your principles. Let us know your answer, A or B, in the comments below. We'd love to hear your perspective and learn how others think in uncertain times. And if you found value in this discussion, please consider subscribing to TD News. Your support helps us keep asking the hard questions and bringing forward the stories that matter.